Alright, what is going on, guys? So today we are going to be doing the last part of the Cobra 700 with a horsepower build series in terms of installs. We're going to be installing the Metco Motorsports parts in order to increase boost and make the car better for more boost. So we have a tensioner support plate, which is actually super easy to install. It's highly recommended on these 0304 Cobras, especially when you're pushing even just this amount of boost, 14 pounds, 19, 21, 22. It keeps that tensioner from flexing and therefore killing belts and belt slip and everything else, snapping tensioners. So that's what this tensioner support plate is supposed to do. We're also going to be installing a 4-pound lower. We're going to be installing a new alternator pulley along with a new alternator. I'm going to throw that in the car. The 4-pound lower, and we'll be good to go. So I have the car jacked up here. We all have all the fuel system, everything all set. So we got the car nice and high, and we got all of our parts for this right over here. Here's the 4-pound lower, interchangeable pulley. We have a bunch of different pieces there. The alternator pulley and the tensioner support plate, and here's the upper pulley for E85. I'm going to start by taking the coolant reservoir and pushing it out of the way. The intercooler tank reservoir, pull that out of the way, and I'm going to pull the radiator fan out of the way. I don't know if it's necessary or not, but I know that that's going to clear up so much more space in this area, which will make things a lot easier. Alright, just like that, we got the radiator fan out of the car. And look at all that space we have just achieved ourselves. So what I would like to start off with, let's do the easiest thing first, and let's do the tensioner support plate. Alright, so I just use a 1/2-inch breaker bar to go ahead and loosen the tensioner, pop the belt off. We're going to look at the instructions here, which are fairly simple. That's why I want to start with this. Usually when I accomplish things that are super easy, kind of motivates me to move forward to the even harder things, which is the lower balancer, which might not be that bad, but it could be bad, so we'll definitely get into it. But the idea behind this tensioner support plate is to basically take this piece, brace it there, and it's going to prevent this tensioner from flexing and even snapping. So it helps it, you know, deflect and not bend, basically. The instructions are pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and start removing the bolts, and then we have, I believe, the new bolts. This thing goes on the outside. It's actually a really simple install. I would highly suggest any Terminator owner out there to go ahead and get this, because a healthy stock tensioner with this brace is actually one of the strongest setups you can run, and having a strong tensioner is extremely helpful when you're running more boost than factory. So I did just realize one flaw in my order of operations here. Yes, this is super easy to install. However, with me installing everything else down below, and I'm going to be putting a different belt on the car, I'm actually going to put this on at the same time, basically towards the end. But you guys can see how easy this is. So you can see that this lines right up with these bolt holes right here, and that is where the brace sits. So it gives you the new hardware with the washers right there, or basically the sleeve that fits in between, and this just helps brace that tensioner. So we're going to move on to down below, pulling the alternator and the crank pulley. So let's go ahead and head down below. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the alternator, and I do that by loosening this bracket down below. It's the easiest way. The alternator literally falls out once this bracket is out or loosened. And then I'm going to tackle the balancer, because once that's out of the way, then this is the last piece that we'll have to tackle. Alright, so I managed to get the alternator off in honestly no time, about 15 minutes. I just loosened the bracket up at the bottom. But I did have to go to O'Reilly's to go pick up a 24mm socket. Apparently I didn't have one. So I'm going to go ahead and blast this alternator pulley off to put the 3.2 alternator pulley on. And the reason you want to go with this is actually larger than the factory one. Therefore, you don't spin the alternator as fast with a 4-pound lower at the bottom. Well, that was actually super simple. Even my Harbor Freight, not extremely strong gun, was able to get this off really easily. And now I'm just going to put the Metco pulley on. And the new alternator, this is the old alternator, which still worked, but it was reading a lower voltage. That's why I just went ahead and threw in a new one, since these are warranted. Alright, and just like that, we have the alternator prepped, ready to go on the car. Now we're going to attempt the hard part, and that is the balancer here. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into it. I'm not exactly positive which steps to go through. That's why I'm going to follow the instructions first. Alright, so I've just been following the instructions, taking various different bolts off. I took the idler off, which that's actually the one that snapped. My friend Clint re-threaded or re-tapped the hole, and he did a fantastic job. That came off nice and easy. So we are going to go ahead and loosen the balancer. This is going to be a righty loosey, lefty tighty. And the Metco Motorsports 4-pound lower comes with the correct hex head to fit into the balancer, which is super convenient. I have this long breaker bar, and this is supposed to be tight. However, I do know that Clint, when he did go ahead and replace that idler threads there, he was able to get this off. So it has been off at some point, so I might be in luck. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a try. Alright, well, I made great progress in the car tonight. It really didn't take that long to get this pretty much all torn down, except getting the balancer off. So I have a jack handle, my 1/2-inch breaker bar, going all the way down to there, and I had someone step on the brakes while I tried to loosen this, and no go. I hit it with some PB Blaster. I'm gonna let that soak in. I'm gonna try again tomorrow. I'm gonna need probably 2 people here for the leverage on the jack handle, and it's definitely really torqued, and it's well known that this is very tight and very hard to get off. It's a righty loosey, but like I said, I'll come back tomorrow, finish this up, no big deal. Alright, so it was a few days later. I finally had help from Lee here. I did a bunch of PB Blaster, and we just broke it loose. It will sound like it breaks when it breaks loose, but now this whole piece will come right off. Alright, so when you break this loose finally, I suggest having 2 people, 2 strong people, and just crank on it, and it'll sound like it breaks, but it is perfectly good. And now I'm gonna let this rest over here, and I'll finish this up later. Alright, now that the balancer is off, we can go ahead and start assembling the Metco 4-pound lower to basically put the car back together. Alright, so I just went ahead and fitted the billet bracket, and this has the idler, so the idler goes on here. We're using the lower bracket hole because we're doing a 4-pound lower. According to the instructions, if you're running a 6-pound or more, you use the upper hole. And basically, from there, the idler will sit right on there and spin. So we're gonna move that off to the side and figure out what to do next. Alright, so now I have all of these brackets in place. It's actually a little difficult to try to figure out what is going on here, but basically these 2 flat bolts go there. There's also a longer bolt that goes down there. Take out a lot of the stock bolts. It's a little complicated, more complicated than I thought it was, but eventually, you know, I figured it out. And I'll show you guys a little bit under the car too. I'm gonna put the lower balancer on now. We put the idler pulley on. I already tested, make sure the idler is in line, at least looks in line to the other pulleys. So I'm gonna continue working on it. It is definitely a little bit more difficult. I also have the alternator in with the new pulley, all plugged in and everything. So I'm gonna keep going. Alright, the lower balancer's in, idler is in, lower bracket, everything's tight. We're gonna put on the tensioner support brace over here and change the upper pulley, put the belt on, and should be good to go. Alright, so I just swapped over to the 3.2 upper pulley. We got the Metco tensioner support plate. That's to prevent the flexing on the tensioner. 4-pound lower, 3.2 alternator pulley, and the full Metco bracket. So I'm going to put the 785 belt on. I believe this is what's going to fit. I also have an 804 in case this one doesn't fit, but I believe this is supposed to be the right size. Alright, so just like that, we have the car back together, batteries in. I do need to button up a few different things, probably put the bumper back on. But if you look, we got the belt all on. We ended up using the 806 belt. It actually fit much better. I'm not sure if this is gonna be too close here on the 2 idlers here, so I'm gonna have to check that. But everything else looks pretty good. You can see the tensioner support brace, the Metco billet plate, and the 4-pound lower. Alright, so we are going to start the car and make sure the belts and pulley system are all working. I am a little concerned because of how close that is, but in theory, it should be okay. Alright, so I've been having some other issues with the car. This car's been driving me crazy. It's all done. Guys over at Mastiff got it all taken care of. Big help, so I didn't have to deal with it. Alright, so we are back now. We got the belt system all set up thanks to Mastiff. So I might have installed it wrong, or I might have just needed some washers. They said they did some washers on the billet plate. We got it all set up. So now it's ready for the dyno tomorrow, which it was really annoying trying to do that on the ground and trying to figure it out. So that was a very big help for them to just go ahead and take care of it. We got to throw the bumper on, clean this thing up, figure out the A-pillar thing, at least a temporary solution, and it'll be ready for the dyno for 93 octane tomorrow, and then E85 the next day, as long as everything goes well with 93 octane. So yeah.